Hello and welcome to Velosio Viewpoint Live, where we chat all things cloud, digital transformation, ERP, CRM, IT security, and so much more to help you take your business from what is to what is possible. Now, before we get into our conversation today, I just want to remind you, whether you are on LinkedIn or YouTube, to go ahead and either follow or subscribe so that you're always getting notified of the good things we have rolling out here at Velosio. And with that, my name is Jessica Rodriguez. I am the performance marketing manager here at Velosio, and I have Erin Moon with me, who is a consulting manager. And we are going to be talking, really extending the conversation that we've been having around AI, and more specifically, kind of getting away from a lot of the hype we've been hearing over the years and just having a real conversation about what it's looking like in organizations now. So we had started with a conversation about the real leader, or the real reason leaders may be hesitant to be implementing AI in their business. So whether we're talking about time constraints, capacity issues, maybe just, some questions when it comes to security and what that could look like. So you can always go back and watch that. And then we did some use cases. So really starting to see different ways that AI can be used in your business, from, just getting started to maybe some more complex use cases that you can grow into. And today I thought we'd wrap up this series with really just kind of starting at the starting line, right? Like, where do you even get started when the last thing you have time to think about is getting started with something, right? Like getting it into a project, and all of that can feel so overwhelming. So before we do that, Erin, give us a little intro. Tell us what you're doing at Velosio.
Sure. Thanks for having me again. This has been great, Jessica. I manage our apps and automation team here at Velosio. And so what that means is I'm working with our clients every day, and I've got a team of consultants that are helping to automate processes, build out cool solutions, and help clients understand how we can use new technology that's coming out. And so I'm in this every day of talking with companies that are maybe just trying to start figuring out AI, as well as those companies that are well down the line and are identifying use cases and asking the tough questions about what AI can and can't do. So it's great to be here, and I love talking about this subject.
So as we jump in, and this could be a very big question to be leading with, but we're going to do it, is, there are so many options out there, right? I know I scroll my feed and I'm waiting for AI to be like, I'm going to tie your shoes in the morning. Like, there's just so many different things we could be doing. Yeah. So if somebody is feeling that initial overwhelm, like, where can they start? Where can they focus as far as even figuring out, like, what does fit my needs? Like, what are those questions people should be asking?
Well, I think there's a couple kind of basic things from an organizational perspective. You want to, when you're selecting a new tool to use, you want to be careful, and you want to evaluate what new things you bring in. And so I think maybe the first thing is just to think about your information, how you might be using that tool, and make sure that it's a company that your organization trusts, and that you will feel comfortable bringing into your environment, right? Because I think that's the first, maybe the first thing is we want to go explore, and I think exploration is good, but when you focus on, okay, how do we really use this? I think that's where Microsoft has a strong selling point, is that most organizations are using Microsoft products today. And I think Microsoft is very straightforward with their ways that they, tell you they're going to be using your data, or allowing you to kind of use those tools in a safe environment inside of your tenant, secured, and that sort of thing. So I think that's maybe the first thing is, what kind of tool are you looking for, and specifically what companies and and organizations are out there that you can partner with. Um, and then I think it's really just all about finding a pain point. I think it's fun to go out there and scroll and look for the AI that's going to tie your shoes for you, right? Maybe you'll stumble across that, like, wow, this is the thing we've been missing in our organization. But I think it really, it's the other way, where you've got to kind of look for a problem that needs to be solved, and then see if you can find a tool that can solve that problem.
Yes, and that kind of leads into kind of the flip side of this. So where do you start to see, I guess, people getting stuck as far as you don't even need to go down that path, right? That's not even relevant for you. So it's almost, how do we put those guardrails up of, this is where AI actually shouldn't even be used in our organization?
Yeah. It's kind of funny. You don't really, it's hard to know that until you go down the path a little bit, and then you figure out, this isn't going anywhere, So there is a little bit of exploration that I think does need to happen. But there is this kind of feeling right now that, again, AI can do anything. And so it should be able to solve this problem. And that's just not always true, or it may be that it's going to take a whole lot of work to make it so AI can solve the problem. I've got an example. I was just talking to a client of mine that I've had a long relationship with, and they were looking to ask some questions of their data, and it makes a whole lot of sense to say, can we use a tool like Copilot? Can we use AI and ask it the question and have it go get us the answer? And the reality was just, I had to kind of break it to them in the moment that AI wasn't going to be able to easily get the answer they were asking, in the same way that if they asked me that question, I was going to have to go dig, to figure out the answer. And AI isn't going to be able to go those multiple levels deep, in order to get you the real answer that you want. A lot of times it's going to be like, your colleague that doesn't really know all the details. You ask them to try to figure out that hard question, and they'll give you an answer that might be somewhat true, and that's what they were experiencing. They were trying to use AI and then finding out that it, at least in that scenario, it wasn't going to be easy. And so we more ended up talking about how do we make the data easier to understand, so that then a person or an AI could easily answer a question from it, right? It's kind of the other side of the coin of the work that you do to maybe make it so that AI could be used. So I think there's lots of examples like that. And then I'll go back to just what I started talking about, which is, I think it's important that you consider the security around whatever tool you're adopting. Again, with something with Microsoft, a lot of times they're giving you these tools, but it's sandboxed. And so if you ask it to look at your data, you don't have to worry that your data is leaving. And that's not always the case. So you want to be careful when you're using these tools, that if you're giving it access to things that they're not moving your data and taking it or using it for something you aren't intending for them to use. So.
Which I think brings me into this question as far as safety and what people can do when they're in this phase where maybe it's just them experimenting, right? They're kind of looking what's out there. I really like your process of what are all the problems we have? And then my assumption would be, okay, what are smaller problems, right? Can we solve for that? Some of the more complex things, that's where more of your specialty comes in, right? And, there are those customized solutions that can help with those, but you start small and you start, seeing what you can solve. but making sure that what it is that you're bringing into your organization is not hurting the operations or, putting customers' data, any of that at risk.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've seen some instances like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I kind of the immediate thing that came to my head was you think about when you do a Google search now and you get that result that's AI generated, and
Mhm.
everywhere it's going to say, "This is AI generated." Basically consume at your own risk.
Mhm.
And I think that's an example of how companies are using AI. They've got AI working there to try to produce a result, but they're doing it in a way to try to make sure that you're not relying on that, at least not yet.
Mhm.
You've understood that this is something that may be helpful, maybe not. And so it's those kind of small steps, like you're saying, right, that I think are really important to say, can we start using AI to solve this problem or to solve a problem that's not super critical. Let's prove it out. And I think we're going to get to the point where we are, solving those critical problems
Mhm.
with AI tools. I think, Google is eventually everyone's only going to be looking at that initial,
Yeah.
response, right? Um, but I think that's what I would recommend is just those small steps. Um, choose a tool that you feel comfortable with, and then try to start identifying those pain points that you can build something for, test it out, have people try it, and naturally, I think that will grow into a more understanding of what it is, what it isn't, and trust that what we're creating is something that is useful and not providing false information, because that's we've all heard about the AI hallucinating kind of
Yes.
that's the thing we need to be careful of and avoid. So
Hmm. And as with any change management, and you're trying to talk to the organization, seeing who's on board, kind of what's going on there, getting a feel for it. When it comes to things like AI, who do you think are important leaders to kind of have in this conversation to make these initial decisions?
that's a great question. So I think when we talk about trying to find ways to use the new tool, I think you got to find the person with the problem,
Mhm.
right? And so I think that's part of it is finding the people to work with that have a problem. And then the other side of that is you need to find people who are excited about the change, and not and really resistant, right? That's going to make it easier. So find people that are interested in finding a new way to solve their problem, that are uh, open to using AI, using a new technology. And then you gotta make sure that you've got kind of the right uh, again security and team that understands what the tool is, and make sure how it's being deployed. And then I think a big part of that is a good partner that you can work with to ask questions of, to make sure that those pieces and parts are being deployed in the right ways.
And there's always those things that you don't know what you don't know, right? Until you get into it. Or I can't tell you how many things just I do on a day to day. And then I talk to someone like, there's a different way. I feel like there's an easier way for this, right? And that's what clients do. They come to you and you're like, oh, all we have to do is, right? But we would never think of that.
Sure. Well, and it's all, we only know those things because somebody has done it that way before,
Yep.
and then you realize there's a new way. And so it's that knowledge, compounding knowledge, of us all working together to figure out what's the right way, what's the wrong way, or maybe just what's the better way, right?
And that's where I can see where having leadership on board, then you have your champions, right? The people who are excited about it. Some people, it's going to take them a little bit longer, right? Just because they need to see things first, or need to get a feel for it, which is fine, right? Like that's there's room for all different personalities, and then you have a partner who goes, okay, I'm used to A and B, right? What that looks like. Also, our experience working with so many different organizations and just, the ins and outs of what that looks like. Really going through it so that you don't feel like you're that lone person championing something, which we all know is impossible, right? Like trying to do it all.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be a team effort, right?
Yes. And how can an organization really start working with Velosio to leverage AI? So, if I would just love to kind of hear the process of a client reaches out and they're reaching out to your team and saying, this is something that we know we need, we know it's out there, how do we start this, right? Like, how do we learn, how do we implement, what does that path look like?
Yeah, so I get to talk with people that are in kind of all different places, right? And we refer to it as the AI journey, because you're always learning something new, and you're somewhere along the path of understanding what it is to making full use of it, right? I think maybe the first thing is, if a company's reaching out and saying, hey, we've been told we need to figure out how to use AI, right? This happens all the time. The people in charge are saying, you guys need to use AI. And so I think the first thing there is making sure that we all kind of align around what do we mean when we say AI. And I think that's, there's just some education, right? There's just some knowledge transfer, talking about what it is, what it isn't. And then I think really what I like to move towards or get into is the discussion around pain points. It's and which isn't new, right? This is the same thing that's always existed. You have something in your business that just doesn't work the way you want it to. It takes you a month to generate a report, and you really wish that it wouldn't. Those kinds of things. And so, I think really it's okay. Let's get to what are some pain points that you have, and I think some of the key areas that you can, we have new tools to address is anything around, documents, around kind of text, things where a person maybe would have had to do a lot of reading and basically summarizing, picking things out, and those kinds of language types of problems are becoming easier and easier to solve with these large language models, right? Or maybe it's image recognition and looking at a PDF or a picture, and understanding what something in that picture. Those are some of the kind of the newer things. I'm just scratching the surface, but what are those pain points that you have, and then we can move towards, okay, here's kind of collaboratively, you've got pain points. Here's some examples of things that we've seen, other companies do, ways that we're seeing people use these new tools. And I think that kind of joins together to say, how can we solve for one or more of these problems? And again, trying to not boil the ocean, but pick something that we can work together on to again, help you learn, but also to help you prove it out to yourself, to your organization, that it's something that's a new tool that could be valuable. And that's really the process that I like to move through with the companies that I get to talk with.
Mm-hmm. And I can also see or imagine a conversation where they have a certain pain point. You can already see, okay, we can leverage AI in this way, and this is how it works. However, before we do that, maybe there's something with their data that needs to be cleaned up. Maybe there's certain things where it's like, oh, ideally this would work, but we actually have some other steps, to do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to go back to that example I mentioned about, they were wanting to ask some questions of their data, and I think we'll get to that point where, man, those questions, we're going to be able to ask those questions and maybe use some AI, use a co-pilot. You can just chat with it. But the first step was, we gotta do something about getting the data cleaned up. And I think about it like AI as a person, right? And if a person's going to get tripped up with this same kind of request, go pull this information out and answer this question, then likely an AI is going to get tripped up too. So we have to answer those questions. We have to clean up some of those processes first, and then we can get to that point of using AI to its full potential.
Just great, because it just becomes another added benefit, because I'm sure whatever comes up, the person's like, oh yeah, like that's a mess, or whatever, we do need to clean that up. It's like, great, right. We can handle that now. Let's just do it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, again, AI is not gonna magically fix your bad data problem. We got to fix that first. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even bad. It's just complex, It's hard, and so those are just the challenges that you have. But we'll get there, right? And so I think, again, it's what are the pain points? What are the things that you want to accomplish that are hard to accomplish today? And let's use our toolbox. We've got a lot of tools that we've used for a long time, but we also have these new shiny tools. How can we use those? What can those do that might change the story a little bit?
Yes. And I see this as, anyone watching, this is your call to action to just kind of grab your phone, grab your notes app, and just, what are those pain points that come up? We all have them, right? There's like those immediate ones that I need to solve these things. Just kind of jogging them, down for yourself, or jotting them down for yourself. And then this gives an opportunity to reach out and say, all right, I got my list. Now can we talk about some of these, right? Like, what is feasible? Yeah. What can happen within that time? And Aaron, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Sorry, you cut out a little bit there. Can you say that one more time?
Yep. The best way for people to reach out with you and say, I got my list. How can we work through it?
Yeah. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me via email. It's amoon@Velosio. I'm available. And this is the conversation that I love to have. So if you've got your list, I'd love to sit down with you and review it, or just talk about AI if you've got some questions or some interest in what it might do for you and your organization.
Great. And I just added Aaron's information for LinkedIn. I'll pop in your email there as well, just so we have it. So right in the comments here on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. So feel free to reach out. And of course, we have a ton of content related to AI and just different things that we have going on over at velosio.com. And Aaron, thank you so much for spending time with me today and for being a part of this series. It's been awesome.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Have a good one. Bye, everyone.